open up with that same.
I stole your thunder.
I
Yeah.
spoiled it for you. It's still funny.
I think there's a glitch.
Can I ask you a question about that? Is this, the text file, you'd have to go back and do some real work to modify that. Where JPEG, as you go down the list, it gets easier and easier to modify
Oh, I don't
a
know.
file that you got.
I'd much rather modify a text file than a JSON. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I added a text file would be my favorite one to add.
Yeah, it's nice because it's also completely version controllable, right? Like you have a PowerPoint
Yes.
presentation or something like that, or a Word doc, right? You can sort of track changes, but it's not, you don't get like the nice diffs of source control, that sort of thing. So I was going to open up with this, and the joke was that that's why I did my presentation PDF in tech as opposed to animated GIF, right? That was the thing that convinced me not to do that. So this is what we're going to talk about with LaTeX. First, we're going to talk about some editors you can use that make things easier. Then we're going to talk about interesting things you can write with it. We talked about letters. We're going to cover articles a little bit. Then we're going to talk about presentations and resumes. And this presentation right here is actually written in LaTeX. So if you have your laptop, you can hit up that URL right there, bit.ly/muglatex, and view the source of this presentation as I'm going along. And we're going to cover some resumes as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some related topics, just things that aren't really LaTeX, but are they're very useful when you're sort of in this LaTeX world. All right, so first up, Vim. So let's see. All right, so let's go ahead and just. So I'm just going to write a real quick. Oh wow, that is really tiny. Hold on 1 second. Zoom that in.
What was that URL?
Oh, that is bit.ly muglatex.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it already converted to GitHub, so I don't have to show it to it.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the hello world real quick for our article. Okay, so we have this tech file right here, right? And I'm using Vim, but then I'm using a Vim LaTeX suite, which is an awesome LaTeX plugin. So out of the box, Vim is great at editing LaTeX, but LaTeX suite adds some nice stuff as well. So let's see. This guy right here, this if you just Google Vim LaTeX suite, you'll probably find the GitHub. There's also, it's on SourceForge as well. This adds a lot of nice stuff I'm going to cover real quick. So the first thing it does is it sets up some automatic Vim folding, right? You can see it like folded the preamble right here. I can go ahead and expand that. And right now it's just this simple document class line, right? But if you're doing complex documents, you can have a lot of packages imported here, right? And really at the end of the day, you don't really care about that preamble, right? You want to focus on your content. So that's one thing it does. It also makes it so, let's see. Oh, I have to compile it first. So it adds, from Vim, you can just like tap leader LL. If you're familiar with Vim, there's a leader key that you assign. So it's just like a modifier, right? So I just type LL and it compiles it for me, and I don't have to leave Vim. Even better, I can type LV, and you can see now here it's up and compiles it for you, pops it up, open in your PDF reader of choice. Another great thing is, say I change world to mug, right? Compile it, you see it updated right there for me. So that is just a great time saver. When you're just sort of rapidly iterating, that sort of thing. It has some nice error checking too, like let me delete the end there.
All right, syntax highlighting is what valid with that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, that's probably Vim itself.
I think that's Vim, yeah. I'm not sure if LaTeX Suite adds more stuff. But then you can see it has right down here some interesting stuff, right? It says like where my errors are. And I press enter and it goes to an error saying, hey, your
Oh, wow.
And so it adds like some nicer sort of like, sort of more IDE features. So, there, and it goes up to begin document, and it says down at the bottom, undefined control sequence, BEGI. So hopefully from that you can sort of like say, oh yeah, I just made a typo or something. And then when I recompile, right, it goes away. So that's Vim, LaTeX Week, and there's a whole bunch of other things you can do, right? I have this setting configured how I like it now, sort of outputting to PDF. There's all sorts of settings you can do if you want to keep it DVI, PDF, if you want to have hooks, like pre-compile hooks, post-compile hooks, that sort of thing. So that's Vim. That's personally what I use. I really think it's great. If you're looking for something that is maybe a little bit more full-featured, right, there's TextMaker. Which is much more sort of an IDE thing. This is actually a great way to get started. So let me do something here. Let's see, can I open this article we just wrote? Yes, I can. Okay, so it's 3 main panels, and we have here our project directory, right? So right now we just have a single file, article.tech. We have our main document here, and then you have a preview here. And so I can go ahead and again, just go ahead and modify stuff here, save it, build it, and if you can see here, let me zoom in a little bit, now it's hello world. And I've actually been really impressed by TextMaker. It seems to handle anything I throw at it, right? Any sort of like presentation that I do via LaTeX, like we'll go into that a little bit more. And that this handles outputting PDF slides perfectly, right? Which was kind of surprising when I was first trying this out. And there's things here that you would sort of expect in a modern IDE, right? You have like your autocomplete and that sort of stuff, and that's really just great for sort of exploring around, right? Because LaTeX can get, well, it is very complicated, right? I think generally people sort of memorize the area that they interact with the most, right? And from then on, it's easy to write. But when you're just sort of exploring stuff, this is great. So that is TextMaker.
When you were using Vim, wasn't there also autocomplete area it looked like to me too?
It sort of was, yeah. So it can do some basic autocomplete, although it's more just like autocompleting what you've already written. I don't think it has knowledge of all the LaTeX packages you have installed or that sort of thing. That's more like TextMaker. Well, yeah, Vim has enough to make me happy, right? But it's not like the huge amount that TextMaker has. The last one we're going to cover is LIX. This is a really sort of popular one when you're first getting started. I'm going to go ahead and show it. I'm not a huge fan of it, actually, but you really can't talk about LaTeX editors without covering LIX. So LIX is interesting because it sort of hides LaTeX from you, right? So you can say maybe new from, I can open a template. We have all these LIX files or LIX files. I probably should have looked up how to pronounce this. So say like you want to start out with a letter, right? This is the view it opens, where you're basically just filling in the blanks, right? Under the hood, this is generating LaTeX, and I think you can actually view the source if you want to. Right down there, right? You can see this address is an address block, right? Where you have your name, your street, your town. But you can't go and like modify the source. You have to give complete control of the source to LIX. So that's for me that's a downside. But if you're just looking to see sort of what sort of templates LaTeX brings to the table, that's a pretty good starting place. So I can go ahead and compile this here. Right, it enters. It's a nice sort of letter format already for you to fill in the blanks.
The math mode in Linux is super awesome.
Oh, really? Well, maybe you can. Okay, so yeah, we have like, let's see, can I insert a fraction?
An inline formula. And then it drops you into math mode and adds those R's down there.
Okay, there we go. So now we can do maybe a sum. Maybe we can do some. Oh, here we go. Okay, I get it. So now we can just like,
A little more losing weight.
4/5, right? So you can see that, like we saw in Jim's presentation, it was a frac 4 and 5, right? Okay, so that's good. Okay, I take back some of my criticism a little bit. That's pretty useful.
Yeah, that's what a fiddler is for.
4 out of 5 doctors.
Okay, so we sort of covered articles a little bit, right? This sort of thing right here is an article, right? We have a document class article. So we talked a little bit about like just stuff you can do, right? Like having a heading here. Right, we get a heading. You can do stuff like set the author, set the title. I think it's a set the date as well. And then you can just say, hey, take all that metadata and make a title page for me. Right, or at least make a title here, and it outputs it nicely for you.
Those were all keywords you had there, date and title and?
Yeah,
those are all-
author, title, date, right,
Yeah.
those are all keywords
Okay.
that make title nice to look for.
But, yeah, so that we know what they are.
Exactly. So, one thing, we were talking a little bit about fonts. This is the default LaTeX font, and you'll see this in all sorts of like mathematical papers. It's probably a very familiar font. But for my personal documents, I'm not a huge fan of this. So there's a package that I really like using called CM Bright. And that, in my opinion, that's a little bit more modern font. Here, it's at least, it's sans serif, and it looks, I think it looks quite nice.
Yeah, they're very clean characters.
Let's see, what else can we cover? We can cover, I guess if you want to include graphics, right, you want to have a image. You have to go ahead and use a package for that, just called graphics. And then you can just say include graphics. Let's see, I think, do I have a, somewhere around here I have a text document. All right. So now we have this guy here. You can do stuff like maybe you want him centered. Now we have a nice centered text. There's a couple of other things you can import. For example, here I have some syntax highlighted code, right? Just a short little snippet, right? Document class options. So I found that's useful, especially in presentations, right? You're giving a technical presentation like this. You might want to have some code. You don't want that code locked away in a PowerPoint file or something like that. So you can go ahead and generate, or just include that here. So for syntax highlighting, LaTeX doesn't have like syntax highlighting built into it. I don't think it has like the listing sort of thing. But there's a couple of tools you can use, right? One is Pigments. So Pigments is a really popular syntax highlighting tool. You'll see even like HTML a lot of times is using like a Pigments theme when you see code on the web. So there's a command line you can install called Pigmentize. So let's say I have some Python, right? I'll say, right? So we can go ahead, and I'll show you what it does, right? It shows syntax highlighted code, right? For that, it's just output in the terminal, so not really useful for what we need. But Pigmentize has all sorts of output formats, and one of those is LaTeX. So you can see it goes and outputs some LaTeX code. It wraps all the tokens in these sort of classes that it generates. So you can output this to a file. Let's just say like Python highlight.tech. And then we also need to get all these functions defined, right? We're calling all these sort of like highlighting functions, right? Like py, ls. So we can say full. Maybe you can say full. Oh, I got a copy of flag there. So now you can see it defined all these functions right here. So we don't really have to worry about like what these functions mean. I don't know what they mean. But it's just like all the basically the color codes, right? If I go down here, you can see we have our RGB values, right? So according to our Pigments theme that we're using, right now I'm using the default Pigments theme. It writes these RGB functions that will be used to syntax highlight the individual tokens in our file. So let me go ahead and get rid of this folder. Right? So now we have just our LaTeX file, or just our LaTeX file right here. So I can go ahead and in my article, we're just going to use the include keyword. Let's see, Python highlight.tech. We don't need to include the tech extension, right? It just only includes text files. And then we need to import all those functions that we had. So we can do the same thing here. We can just include. Let's see, so I think under presentation. I'm just going to go ahead and grab that header file that I have here. So this is our header file that defines all of our functions right here. And here's our code right here. And if I did everything right, oh yeah, there we go. Okay. We can do include, I think include versus import. No, it's not import. All right, so right now it's including a new page. There is another include command you can use that makes it happen inline, although that escapes me right now. So right now this is using the Pigments, just the default color scheme. There's all sorts of Pigment styles, as they're called, right? That you can use if you want to import syntax highlighting, right? So you just specify these at the command line if you want syntax highlighting in your presentation or article or something like that.
Pigments, you said there's a bunch of options for spitting out LaTeX,
Mm-hmm.
but does it only read here in Python?
No. Yeah, that's a good point. This is a tool written in Python, and I'm using it for Python, but it can do a ton of things. So I don't need. Might be too many to list in this page. But pretty much anything you throw at it, it'll be able to highlight. It has all sorts of community documentation, community submitted syntax highlighting files. So I've never found anything that you can't do. So like even just like shell command prompts, if you want to have examples of command prompts in like a tutorial or something like that, right? It'll intelligently highlight your shell prompts. So let's see, that was syntax highlighting. One more thing I want to cover, let's go ahead and get rid of these guys, is graphs, right? So you could always, if you want to have like graphs and figures and that sort of thing, in your LaTeX suite, you can always import an image, right? Just like we included the picture of Tux. But that's a raster image, right? As you zoom in, right, it's going to get blurry. It's going to not be great. So you can also import EPS files, which are vector formats, SVGs as well. I'm going to show how you could, if you wanted to, you could represent that graph as a LaTeX file. So most things can export EPS or LaTeX. Either one of those is fine. I know Mathematica and Maple, the math programs both can. I'm going to go ahead and use a GNU plot right here. Right, just show a quick example. And so this has its own command syntax. It's not really that important. You can just basically say output LaTeX, right? Output a file name graph.tex, and then say plot sin of x. So at this point, we have graph.tex, and it has basically everything you need in order to draw that graph. And a GNU block can be automated, so you don't need to use this funky command line. Similarly, now we can just like we included the source code, right? Now we can include the graph. And here's our nice sine function. You can see that it is actual like numbers being rendered here, right? This isn't a raster graphic. You can select the text. It's all being positioned. So as you zoom in, right, you don't have to worry about things like anti-aliasing or being blurred or anything like that, which is important for graphs when you want to indicate something. You don't want like JPEG artifacts or something, right? Like messing up your graphs. All right, so that's enough of articles and including things. Yeah, there we go. So we also have presentations, like this presentation right here. So there's a couple of ways you can do slides. First of all, you could use the document class slides if you wanted to. That's a very, very simple way of just doing presentations. I'm a fan of Beamer, and Beamer actually comes with most default LaTeX installations. So that's what these slides are done in. So let me actually just pull up the slides. Okay, so this right here is the source for this presentation right here. So you can see it starts out very simple. I do have syntax. I could go ahead and say it's a document class Beamer, which is the name of this presentation. Oh, that's a small term. Can you guys read it at all, or should I zoom that in a little bit?
Zoom that.
It's okay? So I zoom it up? Okay. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and expand everything. So we go ahead and say we're doing a Beamer presentation, right? I'm using a theme called Torino right here. There's a lot of themes that come with Beamer. I just happen to be a fan of this one, right? Since I have syntax highlighting in here just for like this sort of junk, go ahead and include pigments like we saw in that article, right? Because I want to do my syntax highlighting. I set some metadata, very similar to the article, right? I just say author, title, institute is a mug here, right? Who we're giving it to, and date. You can see one thing I don't think we covered. It's always just a little bit cute, right? LaTeX has a LaTeX macro right there, so that's what like this thingy is here, right? It just renders LaTeX in this like fun little thing. So that's probably more of like a cult, sort of like a cult sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like just to show off you're using LaTeX.
Yeah, tech has that too.
So you say we have our normal begin document, and then just for every single slide we want, we just begin frame, right? One frame is equal to one slide. So here we do our title page, just like we were able to do like make title before for our article. We can say just render the title page. It takes all this metadata and spits it out to this main page. And then I have a very simple slides, right? I have some bullet lists via itemize right here. I'm including a graphics. For example, here's the XKCD file extensions comic right here. you have a couple of ways you can position graphics, right? So I wanted the graphic to be 80% of the width of the slide, basically, right? So I say this file extension, this XKCD comic right here, has a width of 0.8. Oh, I'm sorry, 80% of the height of the slide, right? I'm gonna say, if I set that to 1, it'd fill up the full slide. I just want a little bit of space on the top and bottom, so I set to 0.8. Do things like set the frame title here, right? And then we just have a simple bullet list. Have like, I wanted to make that bit.ly link a hyperlink, so I just used href. Somebody was asking about Unicode support or like international characters. Here's an example of resume, right? You have those little, I guess, whatever accents on the E, right? So that's the syntax right there, right? Just put accent on the E.
This is a good example of the fact that white space doesn't matter in LaTeX, other than blank lines will create a paragraph. But you've got white space all over there, so because your code helps with readability.
Right, right.
And it doesn't affect the output.
Yeah. So, one thing you'll notice, this presentation, right, I just spit out this presentation as a PDF, right? I'm just in a PDF viewer right here, nothing special, right? The PDF viewer happens to have like a presentation mode. So, I have like this sort of thing here, right, where as I progress, right, I go ahead and go through each item, which that you do just by saying pause, right? Just after each item list, just say /pause. And so when that renders, you'll see that actually spits out separate slides, right? I have one slide with one here, one slide with another, one slide with a third. It's smart enough to keep you on page 3. It knows it doesn't, like this is page 3 right here. This is also page 3 right here, right? So just so you're not like confusing the audience.
What are you using to display the PDF?
This is actually events, just like
Okay,
the
the
default
default.
gnome. Yeah.
The default, the normal one.
Yeah. Yeah, they completely reskinned it. It's very minimalistic. I'm a fan of it. All right. Oh, one cool thing about presentations that actually I learned when I was writing this presentation is that built into the PDF spec are transitions from slide to slide, right? Like, you know, like PowerPoint transitions, right? You can like do dissolving and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and show that just because that's really cool. Say, let's go here, right? And that's built into LaTeX, or built into the Beamer package, right? So for example, you have a trans right here. And so trans, I have a couple written right here, right? So let's say you want to do a dissolve transition, right? I have it as 2. If it's 1, then I think LaTeX is spelled. All right, so there we go. So there's some transition. That's the dissolve transition, right? Going between each one, right? So there's all sorts of little fun things right here. It really depends on your PDF reader to like whether or not it supports the transitions. Like this.
You just specify that one's up at the top?
Actually, it's per frame. It's right here. So I wanted this slide to transition here. So like transition, everybody's favorite, right? Horizontal blinds. Right. It's a classic. Let's see. Horizontal. Maybe blinds horizontal. Yeah. All right, so we have that business, right? Unfortunately, there's one called glitter. I was really curious what the glitter transition was, but Events doesn't support it. Probably for the best. But so I can't show off the glitter transition. Although my curiosity is killing me.
Digital flyer, typewriter, rainbows.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna have to install
Tummies.
Adobe.
What was that?
You're gonna have to install Adobe Reader.
Yeah, maybe. Trying to. Okay. So that's presentations, right? We covered transitions, if you want to do like entrances per bullet or something like that. The last thing is resumes, right? This is actually sort of what got me interested in LaTeX first. There are some really nice resume packages. the ideal of LaTeX is like you're standing on the shoulder of giants, right? These people have come and they've built like this article class, right? This Beamer class, right? So you just like specify, like mark up your text with the specified classes, and they just focus on making it look pretty, right? So I'm going to go ahead and show off resumes. There's all sorts of resume templates out there. One that I really, really like is a modern CV. So I'm going to go ahead and show that, right? So we have a good old document class. You can specify this font, sans serif versus serif here, so I'll just go ahead and say sans. I think it defaults to serif. Modern CV. Okay, so we go ahead and begin our document, end our document, and as we always do. Okay. Oh, and we can, once we have modern CV in scope, we can say the theme, right? Let's go ahead and specify the blue theme, and I'll use the classic theme. There's a couple of different themes you can use, right? You can specify the color here, right? Various styles. Let me actually just pull up modern CV's website. Good old CTAN here, as Jim mentioned. So they have a lot of examples here. Yeah, I think they changed that. I don't think they were posted on Here we go. So you can see like all the various styles here, right? I'm using blue, right, as the color. You have a couple of styles here, right? You have classic, which I'm using here. You have casual, banking, right? Just things you can go ahead and swap out and see what it looks like. Okay, and same sort of thing here, right? Like we specified our name and stuff like that beforehand. We have a couple of different options. So let's go ahead and say Homer, last name Simpson. Oh, it's actually family name Simpson. Make title here.
May I have your attention? The time is now 8:30 and the library will be closing in 30 minutes at 9 p.m. Please be advised that the internet connections will shut down approximately 10 minutes before closing.
Okay, so far, like, pretty simple, right? Nothing incredible yet. Let's go ahead and put some contact information here. Let's see. You can do a mobile number, right? So now it's specifying the contact information here. Right? It's just nicely formatted, right? And it does nice things, right? Like it makes the Simpson a clickable email address, right? That sort of thing. I personally default to the same sort of like zoomed in margins, right, that we saw in the article. So I like to remedy that by using the geometry package. You have another way to do margins. Just scale it out to have that written down as a good scale.
Geometry's got a bunch of options to it. You can set margins in a lot of different ways, just use the geometry package.
Okay, so yeah, that looks good. So you have like same sort of section, subsection, right? Let's start out with education. Misspelled education, of course.
At least it wasn't spelling.
Right. This is Homer Simpson's email, or resume, right? So we have some leeway. And so there's section, I think there's maybe subsection. Yeah, okay, so we can maybe say like something like graduate school versus undergrad or something. right? And then the modern CV package, which is what we're using for our resume here, provides a couple of nice structured tags you can use. So you have a CV entry. You could say something like from 2005 to 2009, you're in graduate school. I think, let's see, there's a couple of, let's actually go ahead and change this to CV line, right, that's this. Right, and then it does some nice formatting for you there. So there's a CV entry and CV line. CV line is just a simple two-part, right? You want something on the left side, you want something on the right side. So you just wanted to have that like sort of nice margin down the middle. There's also CV entry, which gives you a little bit more to work with. So that one has, let's see, 6 various slots you have to fill. Or you can just leave them empty or empty. Let's say like, right, so it does some nice formatting for you, right? Like maybe put something in bold, the most important thing, right? Does some italics. So it's up to you how you lay everything out, and you end up with a really very nice resume once you fill it all out. It's very attractive. So I'm a big fan of this resume. I use it personally. Not Homer Simpson, but I fill in my. All right. So do we have how much time do you have left? Do we be out of here by 1:45, or I guess sometime for the raffle? And,
Yeah, about 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, cover this. So a couple of related topics. One is Pandoc, which is really, really nice. Pandoc is a tool written in Haskell, and its main purpose in life is to just be able to convert from markup format to markup format, right? So say you want to convert from like LaTeX to docx file, right? You can do that. With like, it's not a perfect copy. It's actually probably about an 80% copy, but it gets you 80% of the way there, and then you can go ahead and you don't have to write that 80%. You can do all sorts of interesting things. I'm going to go ahead and show off, let's see, a presentation up here somewhere. So I have my presentation.tech file, right, the presentation we're currently watching, right? So let me go ahead and use a Pandoc, right? I want to convert presentation.tech. We'll go ahead and convert it to S5, which is a HTML slideshow presentation. There's an S flag you need to say it's standalone, right? We want it to package everything it needs for the HTML presentation, and output it to out. Let's call it. All right. So now you see this is the LaTeX presentation, right? I didn't make any changes to the text file, right? Now you see there's a little bit of conversion issues, right? I have some options here, right? This T plain, there's some options I was passing the slides, right? But it gets you most of the way there, right? Which is really pretty impressive. It generates all that HTML for you. It has some issues with syntax. I think you probably have to go back through and have pigmentize output HTML instead of this sort of fancy LaTeX. So that's one, right? Of course, all the hotness these days, like Reveal.js, right? So here's a Reveal.js, right? So this is like just typical like HTML JavaScript stuff. I think, do I have article.tech here? So I have article.tech. Let me go ahead and use Pandoc on article.tech, right? Put it to docx file or something. Output docx. So we have this like my first document. It choked pretty hard like on the graph, right? But again, it gets you most of the way there. So that's great if you have this nice pretty like LaTeX document. You're applying to a job and say, please upload your like resume in docx format, right? Like, maybe you shouldn't apply there, right? If you really want to, right? You can go ahead and get part of the way there with LaTeX.
Could you try the resume?
Oh, I haven't tried that. That's probably gonna die, but I'll give it a shot.
Try what?
The resume.
Oh,
Let's see it.
yeah.
Missed some important key content.
So you were
yeah,
getting a
yeah.
BS in grad school, that's why I left that out.
So the one last thing I want to cover is ZTech. So ZTech is sort of alternative to LaTeX, right? And it's typography focused and allows for UTF-8 input, right? So LaTeX's big thing is it manages the fonts for you, right? We imported packages and it sort of changed all the fonts around, right? We did like CM, right, integrated sans serif, right? There was the font package, like Times, is like a typical sort of serif font. It does that because it manages all the layout. It wants to know exactly what's going on in the font pile, right? It doesn't want you just sort of like throwing any old font in there, right? Because it's paying attention to all the margins, making sure everything's current properly. So if you really do want to use your own font, right? Say you have like a Droid Sans or some like font you really like, you can use a ZTech here. So let's see, I think I have so it's very, very similar. It's pretty much compatible. It just adds a couple of nice things to for the user, right? I can, for example, say set main font Droid Sans, and that's just a font that's installed in my system. So you compile with the XE LaTeX right here. That goes straight to PDF. Right, so at this point, we have our nice Droid Sans font right there. Right, PDF file. We also do something like in Constellata. Unfortunately, I don't have Vim set up for XE LaTeX. So now we have sort of in Consolata, which is like a nice sort of console font. So that's if you really do want to use your own custom font, you don't want to sort of leave it to LaTeX to decide for you. That's very cool. There's also, ZTech is a UTF-8 input, right? So for LaTeX, when you want to do those accent characters, right, we had to do that like sort of slash accent mark, and then in the brackets we had to say like E or whatever character we wanted to have accented. You can just have like a actual E with accent mark in your source file if you wanted to. So like however you choose to get that in there, whether you have a special keyboard or keyboard shortcuts or alt codes, right? And ZTech just allows that, right? You don't have to have any of the custom sort of slash tick marks or anything like that. All right, so that's all I have.
Very nice.